Does Tennessee have to have any major sort of change offensively to make the college football playoff, or are they good enough right now to make the college football playoff?
Well, I think their schedule may keep them good enough right now, but if they want to be an actual college football playoff caliber team and not just one that makes it, because there's a difference,
Mhm.
I think they would have to change a little bit. They need to do more stretch run plays because they got lucky. Alabama does not threw in some 3-3-5 looks, but they kept that base 4-2-5 in there. Those stretch run plays are the only way to keep the linebackers honest in this 3-3-5. And I know that's not what Heupel likes to do. He wants to go vertical. He wants to, his goal is the running back take the ball between the A and B gap and just gash guys constantly. But you're going to have to do some pulls from the tackles if you're really going to make the 3-3-5 work, or the scheme against the 3-3-5 work. Otherwise, your entire offensive system completely falls apart. And so he's going to have to do more of that. He did some against Alabama, but yeah, I do think if Tennessee's going to be a factor, he's going to have to do more because the thing is now, Dave, you can talk about a base defense 4-2-5, 4-3, 3-4. The truth of the matter is, so many defenses are multiple now, and there's so many edge rushers that could play linebacker or up on the line at end that I would honestly venture to say it's not hard to switch to a 3-3-5 base defense for some of the better defenses in college football on a 1 week out.
Do you worry about other teams pulling out that 3-down look?
Oh, yes. Again, it's... Look, you guys can hate him all day, but Jeremy Pruitt started it. He's the one that said there's not much difference between playing with your hand in the ground or hand in the air. And what a lot of coaches are doing now is they're just saying the guy who would be the other end, we'll pull him back, and we'll have like a smaller linebacker there instead, and he's more of a James Pierce type. A 6'4", 240. No, not as good as James Pierce. Let's be fair on that. But, I'm worried about that if I'm Tennessee. And, again, the way to counter that is to pull on some stretch run plays. Now, part of stretch run plays involves tight end blocking, and I think there's a question about whether or not the tight ends can actually block in the system. I think there's some questions about Holton Staes and Miles Kitselman. But you would think a guy like John Campbell, you pull him to the outside, he should be able to knock down any linebacker trying to tackle a running back, shouldn't he?
Yep, fair. In retrospect, does Tennessee miss Jacob Warren or Jalen Wright more? We would have said Jalen Wright before the season, no doubt, right?
They miss Jacob Warren more. And that's all due respect to Jalen Wright. But, I mean, look at Dylan Sampson and what he's done. I mean, yeah, so... I think it's more they have to change a little bit of their offense. They do. I don't think it's significant. A lot of it is execution still. You hate that. I'm sorry, I hate saying that because that's what coaches say when they say it's not my fault, right? Well, we just didn't execute today. Code for, I called a perfect game and my players let me down. You might as well say that, right?
I don't think there's any argument that Josh Heupel called a great game because if you look at the 3 deep balls, I would argue they missed against Alabama. They got them open for whatever reason, whether it was timing or Nico was off downfield, they just didn't connect. And like you mentioned in our post-game show, Last Look brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, it changes the whole narrative of that game. If they hit a couple of those deep balls, I believe one was the Squirrel, one was the Nimrod, and I thought the ball should have been kept in bounds with Brazel.
Yeah, no, I agree. The only reason I say Josh Heupel may have been questionable with his calling against Florida is, again, he didn't neutralize the 3-3-5. So some of those blitzes that had Nico seeing ghosts came from Florida using that. Now, they didn't use it as much as Arkansas. Arkansas just stayed in that base formation the entire game. But they used it some, and Alabama used it some. And I think part of that's leading to Nico seeing ghosts at time because you're not neutralizing it. Now, Alabama backed off a little bit because, again, the very first drive, they did those stretch run plays with Sampson. And that's why I said on the opening drive when Dylan Sampson fumbled, Tennessee doesn't need to worry. That was a fluke fumble. And the truth of the matter is they found a way to really neutralize what teams are doing against them. But they're going to have to do that more. They're going to have to adjust more. And I think there are some issues with that. Because right now Josh Heupel is kind of staying to the well. But again, there's 2 weeks there's 2 weeks off. You can kind of figure out how to adjust and work on that. But... as of right, this is the difference between a system coach, Dave, and a coach that can make adjustments. I've always said we call Josh Heupel Steve Spurrier, but the biggest difference is, I think you would agree, the fun and gun wasn't a system, right? The fun and gun wasn't like a set like plays and we run these all the time. No, the fun and gun was just he just threw it all over the field because there weren't enough fast players on the other side to cover all his receivers. But I think Heupel is a system coach. The question is, can he tweak it? Now,
I agree. All right, let's bring this guy in here. John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel, and we will get to that question about Tennessee's offense. Is it good enough right now to win a natty? Let's bring John in here. John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. Welcome, John, as you are officially a part of a Bench Off 2024. And the question that I have for you is, how many times do you think this morning I benched Caleb's body weight? Was it not in person, but on a bar? Was it 0 to 5, 6 to 12, or more than 12?
I will plead ignorance and apathy on that. Don't know, don't care.
Plead apathy.
John, Dave is like, he just wants so badly to show off his guns to everybody. It's like, you know, he's basically, I said he's basically a Jersey Shore guy from 2009. You know, he's like, everybody, let's talk about me working out for good football.
Swole. Yes.
Dave, seriously, Caleb's laughing about that, but you seriously need to work on that. You don't need to work on your biceps.
Well,
you need to work on what's going on up
Today's
here.
tough.
Nobody cares how much you can bench press.
The
Nobody.
Dave Hooker Show.
Wow, John just really undercut Dave.
all right, John, you wrote that Tennessee just needs to be consistent, not great necessarily. And we've seen other teams that we consider college football playoff contenders not be consistent, and it's cost them, a la Texas last week. So let me twist that and morph that just a bit into this question. Is Tennessee's offense good enough right now to win a natty? And the options are yes, no doubt, no, not yet, and then can't do it this year. It's just not going to happen.
No, not yet.
Okay.
I think there's a potential for the offense to get better. I like what happened against Alabama. It was an improvement. Granted, Alabama is not as good defensively as some teams Tennessee will face, certainly Georgia and teams that it might face in the playoffs. So, but you can't, you got to look at it from an improvement standpoint. I thought Nico made progress, and that was very significant.
So, John, you know, to that, do you think, because we were talking before you came on, I think mostly it is about execution, but I think Tennessee slightly needs to tweak some play calling going forward. Do you think it's more just the players need to play better, or does Heupel need to do a little bit better calling plays for the offense to improve?
I think both. I think that the team still needs to play better, still need to have better pass protection, better play from your tackles. Receivers need to make plays. But also, I think what's really important right now, and that Heupel and Tennessee's offensive staff needs to understand what Nico does best, what he doesn't do well, and shape the game plan accordingly. And I think going in, just looking back over the way Nico played the first 3 games against weak opposition, and then you go against stronger competition, doesn't do as well. I think Tennessee coaches might have been fooled into thinking this guy can do anything. I think maybe we were all a little guilty of that.
Agreed. And so is that, I guess that's on Tennessee's coaches. They throw a lot on him. How much better do you think he can be? I mean, are we having a conversation at the end of the year? Because it's a long year now, especially with the college football playoff, where he's one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the SEC, which is very deep at receiver. Or for this year only, is he going to be a middle of the pack quarterback for the Vols?
middle of the pack. I mean, we're already 7 games in. I don't see him their number of quarterbacks I would certainly take ahead of him right now in the SEC. And again, I'm guilty of hyperbole. I made him out to be more than he was going into this season. A lot of that based on what he did in the Citrus Bowl. But I saw a little more of the Citrus Bowl, Nico, against Alabama. And I saw a little more of him of what he did in the first few games against Alabama. So to me, that signified improvement. But no, he's not exactly who I thought he was. And I kind of looked at him like, oh, the guy's got no weaknesses. He'll come in here like Johnny Manziel or Tim Tebow, a different type quarterback, but who excelled right away. And that hasn't happened. And so I don't expect it to happen the rest of the year. But I saw some more things that I like, particularly the running. I think it's pretty obvious now he needs to run because I think that gets him into the game more. And I think he becomes a better passer when he's running.
John's appearance brought to you by Newbert Collision Center. Why I disagree with what John said, and I still think Nico can be elite by the end of this year. Quick message from Newbert Collision Center, and then I'll tell you why I think Nico can be elite in 2024.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Newbert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Newbert.
John, my argument is this. Tennessee excelled when they rolled Nico out of the pocket. He made the great pass downfield on the run that a lot of dudes just can't do. I think they were hamstrung by the offensive tackles more so than Nico's comprehension of the offense, in particular in the rollout game where the tackles have to, no pun intended, hold on to their blocks a little bit longer. They did hold, and that was a problem. So I don't think the ceiling rests in what we could see from Nico as much as it rests on the offensive tackles and how well they can protect.
Yeah, that's a part of it. I also don't think Nico's reading the field as well as I thought he would. I think he locks in on one guy too much, and that's led to some interceptions. Again, I made him out to be all world just because of how he played in the Citrus Bowl and because of people who saw him daily in practice and how they raved about him. Nobody questions his arm talent, of course, but there's so much more involved with the quarterback. And I just don't know. Now, you think when you roll out and you cut the field in half and you're not having to read as much, I think he'll be more effective at that.
Okay, I can roll with that. Pun intended. Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. HOOKED for 10% off.